Hello.
Good evening, everybody. Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts, Southern Regional Centre, Bangalore, in association with Bharati Vidya Bhavan. I, Shri K.M. Chandrasekhar, Program Officer, IGNC SRC, in association with Bharati Vidya Bhavan, I cordially invite you for a lecture on Are Indians Ignoring Our Civilization While the West Appropriates It by Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji. The Indira Gandhi National Centre for the Arts was established in the year 1987 as an autonomous institution under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, as a nodal centre for research, documentation, archiving, academic pursuit and dissemination in the field of the arts. The arts encompasses a wide range of subjects, from archaeology and anthropology to the visual and performing arts, enveloping them in a complementary, integrative and non-demarcative vision. Through workshops, seminars and conferences, concerts and performances and exhibitions, these cultural artifacts are disseminated to the public at large. The IGNCA has a Southern Regional Centre headquartered in Bengaluru. It's established in the year 2001, was aimed at intensifying the centre's studies on the Southern region's art and cultural heritage. Spread over 10 acres outside the precincts of Bangalore University campus, the Southern Regional Centre is devoted to cross-cultural exchanges on various developments in the field of art and culture of India in general and the South India in particular. The centre has initiated several research projects and academic activities. We have a rich repository of over 13,500 microfilms, 14,000 books in the in-house library. I request Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji to come over on the dais, please, with your claps, with your applause. Thank you so much. May I now request Shri H.N. Suresh, Director Bharati Vidya Bhavan, to give his welcome note.
Distinguished Speaker Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji, IGNCA Executive Director Sri Vikram Sampath ji and his team, distinguished guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. This program in association with IGNCA is first of its kind, and we are extremely happy to host this. You will be glad to know many more such programs on current affairs, corporate issues, global governance, importance, ethics, civilization, art, and will all be here in the days to come. I thank IGNCA authorities for this collaborative venture as well as associating with Bhavan. On behalf of IGNCA and Bhavan worldwide, I extend a very hearty welcome to Sri Rajiv Malhotra ji. Thank you very much, sir, for having been here. As you all know, he is a multifaceted personality, all rolled into one, and has particular interest and expertise not only in corporate affairs, but also in our art, culture, ethics in equal measure. It is very rare to possess such a combination in the lived past and the lively present in one human being. He is an avid thinker. His quest for exploration of the new avenues or still ranking with him. We are very proud of his contribution, who is guiding the destiny of the West with his corporate wisdom, and he is also been advocating turnaround management by interpreting the essence of dharma, a word which is very difficult to be translated into English convincingly. His achievements, performances, perseverances to make the best of every field are amazing and unparalleled. He is a great researcher, prolific writer, genuine author, avid speaker, public interest, all this in one person, and he is here before us, and I don't want to make you wait for eagerly to listen to his speech.
Namaskar and thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here and grateful to Vikram for inviting me on behalf of IGNCA and Bharati Vidya Bhavan for hosting. I think we have a good common goals and visions, and therefore these organizations are wonderful partners for what I'm going to tell you. You know, I'll start with an anecdote to make the point of my talk. About the year 2000, I received a grant proposal from IIT Kharagpur that they were going to celebrate the 50th anniversary within a year or two, and they wanted funding for conferences on many topics. So I asked them to send me the list, and one of the topics was mind sciences. That was very fascinating because I do a lot of work. And in fact, I concluded that the way to teach Hindu ideas is not religion, because then there's mental blocks and so on, but psychology, mind science, because it is a mind science. It's about who we are, nature of the self. The whole Yoga Sutra is a mind science. All the tantras, all the meditations, they are mind science. And now they're being accepted like that, but in those days it was not. So I asked them to send me the agenda, the details about mind science, and then I could decide. And what they sent me was filled with speakers and topics that were 100% Western. Everything was, you know, Freud or Jung or behaviorism, and this ism and that ism was based on Western ideas of mind. And it bothered me, so I wrote back saying that if you are willing to do at least one panel on Indian models of mind science, then, you know, I could sponsor that entire conference. And I got back a very sort of talking down at me letter, which I still keep, you know, which says, sir, we are scientists, we are not Hindu chauvinists, we are not saffron, everything we do has to be legitimate and scientific, and it cannot be, you know, like that. So I knew the colonized and inferiority complex of such people. So I got hold of a bunch of my American white friends who I've been in touch with for a long time. And always I used to tell them that you got so much out of our culture and why aren't you giving back? And they used to say, because in India they don't want it back. So I contacted such people. One of them is Robert Thurman, who's the head of Tibet House and in charge of religious studies in Columbia University. He's a Buddhist and follower of the Dalai Lama, no embarrassment. So I said, you should go and give a talk on Buddhist mind science. And he said, of course, Buddhism is the preeminent mind science in the West now. So there's no problem. Then I got hold of somebody who was a Sri Aurobindo follower, and he's a psychiatrist, and he's using all these Indian techniques for psychiatric therapies, and I told him, you should go talk. And then I got somebody who's into Kundalini, and I got a Cambridge professor who's translated Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, and he practices for 20, 30 years. I picked only those who are very open about having had a guru and not embarrassed of it. And I gave them a lecture and said, you have to go and use the Indian terms, the Sanskrit terms. You should explain your own history of how you got initiated. Don't hide the Indian source. You have to emphasize that. And just be very clear how this is the Indian mind science. what are the texts, what are the practices, who are the teachers you learned it from, and then explain how you teach it in the West, and what is the benefits people are getting. And if you're willing to do that, I'll sponsor you. So I took their abstracts and their proposals, and I sent it to IIT Kharagpur, and immediately they accepted, everybody, because now it is white people, so it must be okay. No more chauvinism was there. They accepted it. They're so happy. There are 5 guys from Western countries will come. Oh, they'll talk about Indian mind science. Must be okay then. That kind of inferiority complex. And these people got such standing ovations in this conference. Then many other places in India wanted to invite them. So there's deep hidden pride, but embarrassment of public. This is the Indian complex. So I told them, wherever you are getting invited, accept it, we will sponsor you. And so for many years, we kept sponsoring, and we created a whole discipline called Indian mind sciences, Indian psychology, as a result of these people. And then we phased them out, and Indian faculty, Indian researchers took over that space. And so the reason I'm giving you this example is to show you that the Indians had a big problem with the idea of Indian contributions to mind sciences, but the West was appropriating it. They were very happy, relaxed about it. And I found this prevalent in so many fields. So many fields I found this. I've been in the US for 45 years almost now. And I've done a survey of yoga centers. Like, I would say, except for 2 or 3% that are owned by Indians, which is just recent trend. Most are owned by, white Americans, Judeo-Christian people. And most of the students who go are also Westerners. So Indians kind of abandoned because they'd gone there to make money and become westernized, you see. So I remember a talk I gave in Houston in the 90s, where I told them that this yoga is becoming very big, and instead of Indians opening up gas stations and convenience stores and motels, you should also invest in yoga as a business, because it's going to be a thriving business. And they thought I'm some old-fashioned guy and all that. Same person, 2 months ago I was in Houston, I reminded him of this, Durga Agarwal, and he remembered. He said, in my house you said all these things. I said, yes, and at that time you people made fun of it. And now you missed the boat. So the Indians keep missing the boat concerning our own tradition. So I have started writing on this quite a lot. And I came up with a theory called the U-turn theory, which is that many Westerners first come and, with great respect, study an Indian idea. They practice it. They might even get initiated. Then they gradually, the ego says, hey, it's mine. Why do I need this baggage of Indian, Hindu, Buddhist baggage? So they start presenting it as their own discovery to their followers. This is stage 2. Then there's to become really powerful, they say this came from Plato, or it came from Jesus, or they give a lineage of Western original sources and put themselves in that line. So they've kind of joined the parampara of great Western thinkers, putting themselves. So this is a way to kind of remove the Indian context, introduce their own. And then some of them, when they have face a person like me, why are you doing this, will find an excuse to trash the Indian source. The Indian source is not good enough. There is something inferior. The reason I switched is because there's something wrong in it. It was oppressive. It was oppressing women or Dalits, or it's irrational. It's mystical, but we are also rational Westerners. So we can do it better, this sort of thing. And Jung, when he was teaching Kundalini, and Kundalini Yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras in the 1930s in Zurich. He was teaching summer institutes, and these are part of his collected works. You can find all this. He wrote that yoga is unfit for Westerners because it could be dangerous. He was, on the one hand, appropriating it and saying that what Westerners should practice is what we Westerners have discovered, meaning that he's the discoverer who will teach the other Westerners. But they should not go directly to the source because it could be dangerous. So this kind of distortion on the one hand and appropriation on the other hand has been going on. And the final stage of the U-turn is that this distorted, made in USA kind of thing gets sent back to India, where everybody loves it. So Andrew Cohen, who done this U-turn, his yoga meditation in Delhi and Gurgaon, very popular. You go to these big high-rise buildings, Andrew Cohen teaching you this. But actually, he went to Raman Maharshi Ashram and these kind of places, learnt all these things. Then he rejected them. And then he invented it as his own. And then he started marketing it. So Indians have a problem of made in India, and the same thing made in USA, they'll buy it. So this is a serious problem. Now, one of the projects we started in the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, where we have a Center for Indic Studies, is to revive a Vedic method of learning, which is a kind of oral tradition. And it turns out that in the 50s, a man called Lozanov, who was in the former Soviet bloc, he was sent by the Soviet Union to find out, to do some research on yogis and Indian mystics, find out what kind of higher powers they had, because the Soviets thought there might be military application. Maybe they can fly or something, you know, maybe you can do some, you can imagine where are the missiles of the other enemy, you can imagine it or some they had some ideas. And CIA, by the way, also did some experiments like that to try and see if yogic powers could be used for military applications. Soviets and CIA both doing it. They've written about it now. So Lozanov came back and said that he didn't find military applications, but he was a neuroscientist. What he found was extraordinary memory. That these people could learn tens of thousands of verses and they could just keep chanting very accurately. And according to him, neuroscience did not consider this possible. So much human memory was not possible, according to neuroscience at the time. So they kept sending him back to understand how such a lot of memory can be achieved. And he came back and developed some methods, which he then started teaching. And he said that, you know, in the traditional Indian schools, when they teach mathematics, you sing the tables. You sing the tables like 2 times 3 is 6, like that. They sing. There's a certain beat, rhythm to it. And I was taught in one of these supposedly modern Western schools in Delhi. And when I used to visit our village in Ludhiana, my grandfather was principal of a traditional school. He was a math teacher. So sometimes I would go to their class and I would see that these students are sitting on the floor and they are singing the tables. And I would wonder why are they singing the tables, and nobody could tell me the reason. And I thought this is some kind of silly, inferior idea they have. You know, we don't need to sing the tables. Now, what Lozanov discovered is that knowledge, which is taught in a musical way, is better encoded because you use both the left brain and the right brain simultaneously. The musical brain is one part, and the intellectual knowledge, factual knowledge, is the other part. And the use of imagery, art, drama, theater, dance, which kind of is remembered by your imaginative part, artistic part, also conveying knowledge, philosophy, facts. So when you dance the music or when you sing the mathematics tables, you're using the left brain, right brain, both brains. And so he discovered as a neuroscientist that this is a secret to memory, associative memory. This is a way you can associate it with things. So this became a very big movement. And Lozanov, some years ago, he was in his 90s. I don't know if he's still alive. But Lozanov, then when the Cold War ended and all, UNESCO sent him to continue doing this research in India. And he wrote some books on how to develop brilliant children, how to, he called it accelerated learning. So a whole movement started in the US, and parents send their kids to special schools for accelerated learning, which means in 3-4 months you can learn what normally would take a year, using these kind of methods. And it's basically multimedia, that you should have tactile, you should have visual, you should hear, you should have all your senses kind of involved, or as many senses as possible involved in learning, and then you retain it better. It's very interesting. It's a very Indian method of, storytelling, enactment, like that. And in the West, it was not like that. It was memory, learning was just an intellectual kind of process. So these accelerated learning things started. And now the accelerated learning movement is very big because parents want their kids to be very smart. And they do not remember anything to do with India. And the people who are leaders do acknowledge that their mentor is Lozanov, this man. So when all these schools trace their origin to some great thinker, great pedagogy person, and that person was a student of Lozanov, then I connected Lozanov where he got it from to fill the gaps. So we went to the education authorities in Massachusetts state, and we presented that we can teach students to graduate school, which takes 12 years, from kindergarten to 12. We can teach them to do it in 7 years. And so we threw a challenge that we will get a batch of students and we will put them through our method of learning, and you watch it and you monitor them every year and you produce a report. And then if we are successful in meeting the standards of the state education faster than you normally do, then this would become a method of education. So in the state of Massachusetts, this experiment is going on, and the first 1 or 2 batches have graduated successfully. And these are not students who came in very bright. They came as very ordinary students. Some of them were dropouts. Some of them came from poor homes. Some of them were refugees. Some of them did not even know English. They were immigrants. And this system has been very successful. So now, the interesting thing is, in India we've forgotten this and we're trying to bring Western method of learning. See, and they are using this method of learning. So it is also interesting that what we now call liberal arts in the US is what places like Nalanda taught and Takshashila taught, which is not a very narrow technology only or narrow medicine only. I mean, the person who knew medicine, who knew psychology, and he knew all kind of other things, he was very all-rounder. Teaching all-rounders, training all-rounders, because you exercise all parts of your brain. So it was not uncommon that the person who knew a lot about Mahabharati also knew something else, So for us it would seem like, why are they not specialized? But there it was a different idea. So the West is going into that. And they have a difficulty because they're so compartmentalized that they have to do an artificial synthesis of things that have become compartmentalized. Like Western dance got nothing to do with Western philosophy. And Western philosophy got nothing to do with Western medicine. But here, these things are not separable. They are already... So in my book, Being Different, which we have available outside, I've shown what I call integral unity, which means the unity is already there. Contrast with the West, synthetic unity, which means it is not already unified, it is artificially, you have to force it to be unified. So that is a big difference between one kind of education and the other kind of education. So we are taking the integrally unified civilization of India, breaking it into fragments, bringing in new models of education, thinking we are becoming more advanced. And then we are fragmenting. British started this by they had to train babus who were one-dimensional, who couldn't think for themselves. So a lot of Indians, I find, are not able to think for themselves. They're even afraid. So they're very narrowly, and this is more true in the metros. I find a villager is more capable to figure things out. Yeah, a lot of intuition and common sense more in the villages. And here it is more mechanized. The young people in the big cities become more mechanized. They can just memorize something and put it out in the exam without being able to think much. So humanities, higher education, being kind of colonized now in a very frantic rate by Western invasion is a problem I see. While the latest trends, the people at the cutting edge in those countries are introducing meditation as part of the curriculum, yoga as part of the curriculum, imagery, creative thinking, whatnot, dual brain, In our case, it's not just we don't have dual brain, but it is often no brain, kind of. Just brainless, just keep, producing these people. I also have a very provocative position on the future of literacy. We are frantically chasing an old model which says that education means literacy. But we had the oral tradition. And in the oral tradition, the guru would sit and say, I'm not reading from notes, you don't do notes, I'll teach, you pay attention. I'm teaching you how to pay attention to me. So it is like dance is taught like that today. Music is taught like that. You don't learn music by reading some scores like in the West. You listen, you train your ear, and then you replicate that, what you learned. And then you become better and better. So dance is taught like that. You don't read a book and learn. So cooking, the Indian chef doesn't have a written recipe book. In the West it is, take so many grams of this and turn it to 35 degrees for 3 minutes. And then take, the Indian guy just takes a pinch of this and this, that, and he has an estimate and he figures it out. And this quality requires a human embodied, what I have coined the term embodied knowing, which is lacking in the other tradition, which is more mechanical, like a robot could do that, what they are doing. So this embodied knowing, integral unity, system of education is being destroyed and a whole civilization being wiped out, while this is at the cutting edge of Western educational models, Western models of neuroscience, cognitive science. So they're bringing in all the things that they're learning from us, repackaging it as their own, giving it some artificial history. For instance, if you go to the state of Massachusetts medical system, they've introduced a new course called holistic medicine, mind-body medicine, that kind of a thing, which is all from India. All this meditation, Ayurveda, herbal, is all Indian influence in recent years, last 30 years. But if you take as an elective, you can specialize when you're specializing in to be a doctor. You can take alternate medicine, this holistic medicine as your specialty now. And one of the courses you take is the history of holistic medicine. So I read through their syllabus. In the history of holistic medicine, all the discoverers and originals are Americans in the last 30 years. They discovered it all. There's not one Indian, no source mentioned. The whole thing is a history. They've turned it into their discovery. And the interesting thing is now we'll have in the new governments and old governments this huge Harvard coming, Yale coming, this university coming, setting up. This Americanized idea of history, Americanized idea of education, our own knowledge repackaged coming back here. This is a very serious problem. Very big crisis that nobody knows. I don't think our new government even know these problems, because they've made a few appointments where they've taken such people. I call them digesters. They are digesting our tradition and turning it into their own. And what doesn't fit, they excrete it. Yeah. Caste, dowry, sati, all these bad things, cows, snakes, all these dirty things. We don't want it. This kind of we're going to take this cleansed up thing and this is ours. So they're taking that, and these kind of people I keep track of. I write books on them. I argue with them. And it really hurts me when our government goes and gives them Padam Shri or give them award, appoint them and so on. So one of the other examples I give you is computational linguistics. Computational linguistics is the latest, one of the current big fields in computer science. And computational linguistics is the field whereby natural languages are going to be translated from, say, if somebody's speaking in Korean and the other guy wants to hear it in Russian, and when the guy speaks in Russian, I want to hear it in Korean in real time, or any language X to Y people talking. This instant translation, may I please finish? I know you're very smart, but may I please finish? Please. I know that. I'm getting to that point, yeah. So this, I'd lose my train of. So this instant translation is being done with Panini's grammar. Because Panini's grammar has the structure such that you take X language and map it to the Paninian structure, then you map out to the other language and back and forth. A lot of people are doing it. It's not Microsoft. Google also introduces a lot of people doing it. But they're doing rudimentary. It's going to get more sophisticated, more sophisticated. The point is that the copyrights, the trademarks, the intellectual property of doing it is going to be owned by these companies, and a huge industry is not only for telecom, because people of different countries will be able to speak to each other without having to know English, but also television. When somebody is giving the news, it'll be in your language. So, and publishing, you can publish it in your book and they'll translate it. So this automatic natural language processing is Sanskrit. But what they're doing is distorting Panini's language to fit the computer. Because, the alphabet in Sanskrit has more than the 26 English alphabet. So you're taking all kind of sounds with emphasis, with intonation. Like there's some of them you can't reproduce in English. Like r sound you don't have. So you can either have r or d, but you can't have r and r also. So like that. So also the intonation, which is very important in our idea of chanting mantra and all that, is being removed to make it easier for Westerners to understand it. So we are trying, our Sanskrit scholars are being funded to go and finish this, dish it out to them. Yeah. So that, because we have a complex, rather than saying, listen, I can't translate it, I can't get rid of r. Now you can't speak, that's a different problem, but r is r. R will not become r or d. Our people don't have that courage. So we are constantly getting digested into somebody else's framework because they have money, they are more progressive in our opinion, they're superior. So that's the problem. Not only we are losing the intellectual property rights, but we are also getting digested and distorted in the process. That is a very serious problem. Now, one of the big issues I'm working on currently is that Sanskrit itself is being hijacked. Because Sanskrit studies, we have downsized in India. We haven't really given it much importance. The West has taken over the control of Sanskrit studies. So they are defining history of Sanskrit, interpretation of Sanskrit texts, all kinds of things. And so, for instance, in US, there is a Sheldon Pollock. He's a very prominent professor, and I'm writing a huge critique of him. He's very famous in India. He got the Padam Shri from the UPA government, and he has a whole army of people he's funding in different academies, different scholars, people like that, who are dishing out all kind of data that he needs. So when he writes a book, it's full of data. You get so impressed, so much data that he got from all kinds of places. And you'll be so impressed that he's producing it, and you'll thank him for it. People lift him up as his devata, and especially he can chant some mantras, and he comes in a dhoti with a tilak, and he does all these things, so people are very impressed. But the fact is that his history of Sanskrit is a distorted history. It is not good for us at all. And his interpretation of Ramayana, he totally negates the oral tradition. No value for him. The Paramarthika Vyavarika idea. Paramarthika is the use of Sanskrit language, philosophy, etc. to reach the transcendental realm. And Vyavarika is the use for daily living. And in our tradition, these are interconnected. Like dance is Vyavarika, but it takes you to a transcendental realm. Like Kavya, like you enjoy theater, and it gives you the rasa, which can take you to Brahman. So he's very critical of the Paramarthika realm. He wants to remove the oral tradition, remove the Paramarthika realm, reinterpret the relationship between Sanskrit and vernaculars. He's done a lot of work on Kannada. He worked with very leftist type people like Anantamurthy and Girish Karnad and people like that. So they supply the left-wing ideology. So he's got this whole theory that Sanskrit is a very oppressive language. It's a language of bias and prejudice. Now the reason I'm telling you this is that very powerful people are helping him in India. So the Murthy Classics Library has Sheldon Pollock as the editor-in-chief. And so, who are the editorial board? All Westerners. It's not their mother tongue. None of the language is their mother tongue. So it's one thing to translate with reading a dictionary and all, without having the nuance and having the embodied feel of that language in your life as your mother tongue. And you're not invested in its future, it's just a job. And your ideology is different. So he, for instance, writes that Sanskrit is imported into India by Aryans. It's not an Indian language. That's one of his ideas. That alone would disqualify him if I were looking for someone. Doesn't matter how much knowledge he has and what he's written, if he doesn't even have this idea, this much respect. But then, so Murthy Classics Library, they funded him millions of dollars. And Sonia Gandhi's government gave, Padam Shri. And I got really excited and involved and very concerned last summer when I heard that the Shringeri Mutt are thinking of setting up Adi Shankara Shringeri Mutt chairs in US under his leadership. So he will take his students trained by him, and he gets these very extreme left-wing students. So he'll take these students and give them these chairs. So you will have basically the Shringeri Pitham will be hijacked. So this is hijacking the Shringeri Pitham in essence. So I went and talked to the Shankaracharya. And I found out to my surprise that he did not know of my issues. I tried to send many letters and emails. They'd all been filtered. They'd all been tracked. Somebody had captured them along the way in his organization and diverted them. Each time I would write a letter to the Shankaracharya, this person, who's very senior in the Shankaracharya Mutt, would intercept and send it back to Sheldon Pollock's team. So they would call me and say, oh, we already know your letter. Yeah. So it's like hijacking. It literally kind of infiltrated. So when I went, I was able to get an appointment with him, finally, because somebody in Chicago knows Shankaracharya. Their father used to work there, and so they have a personal connection. And they said, we will get you an appointment without anybody else knowing that you're coming, because nobody will interfere. So I went there, and T.S. Mohanji, who's sitting somewhere here, he took me there, and few other people. And it's very interesting, when we arrived, this person who was intercepting was sitting there. He already knew that I'm coming. But very quietly he sat. He didn't interrupt my conversation. And so I told the Shankaracharya, this is the issues, these are the distortions, and it will create a very big scandal for the Mutt if this happens, because there's people who are very concerned. The Mutt is the keeper of our tradition, and we have to do Purva Paksh on such a man. We have to do Purva Paksh, which means we have to study what this guy writes. That is the Shankara tradition. You must study the other side. And nobody in the Mutt has done this Purva Paksh. So we should do that Purva Paksh. So he was sympathetic. He gave a sympathetic hearing, but he didn't commit either way, which is fine. And now we'll see where they go. But Pollock has got a huge parampara of people all over India who are on being paid by him for a long time. So he's got loyalty. So these people lobby for him also. And he's got very left-wing Indian journalists whom he has trained in the US. They come, they learn enough Sanskrit to kind of pretend like they know, and then they are sent back. So this is an example of the kind of battle I fight. That on the one hand, our tradition, we are getting less and less interested in. On the other hand, many things are being taken, and then these things come back with somebody else's interpretation. And we are very happy with, in fact, thank him, oh, you're teaching us all. One of the arguments I hear from people who are Indians, wealthy people, raising funds for such chairs. Raising funds, taking our money and giving it to such people. This, but we should be thanking them because they're doing this for us. Then that way we should be thanking the British because they were learning our kind of things when they were here. We should. We should be thanking, Max Miller, we should be thanking Robert Di Nobili. We should thank all those guys because they came here so far, sir. They came here, they're wearing sandals, they're putting up with the heat and the mosquitoes, and we should thank them. All the evangelists, we should thank them and say, you are coming so far and trying to help our people. So I think we got very serious complexes. And the strange thing is that I keep talking about this, keep pumping out material, writing here and there, but not, and individually I have a huge number of followers, especially young ones in universities and so on. But the people in power are not very plugged in or interested. Whether it's government, old government, new government, doesn't matter. Whether it is corporate India, they are not putting their money into this. And I'll close with another kind of a thing, sad situation, then I'll throw it open for questions. About 15 years ago, we were still giving huge grants. My foundation was to, various universities in the US, because at that time we had a lot of money. We don't have that same funding now. But we had this, and I was learning, and I went through this phase of naivete, thinking I'll give grants to scholars and they'll produce this kind of work, but I realized I have to do it myself, because they're not going to do this. They cannot do it. They don't have the imagination, the creativity, the articulation, and some of them are scared, some of them have a vested interest, so they're not going to do it. So I started doing it myself. But that was later. During that time, when I was still giving grants, I was very highly sought after by all these universities. We were funding the Indology Roundtable at Harvard, and we were funding various projects in Columbia and all kind of big universities. So one of these Ivy Leagues, when I was being treated like some important guy, because we could get some more money out of him, and I could understand the game. So they took me to the librarian of the archives section, said that I want to take you to a very special archive we have concerning India. So he took me to the basement, and there was a room about this size, filled with maybe 100, 200 crates. He said, these are manuscripts of India. We haven't even opened them. They've been sitting here 20 years. You give us money, we can open them, catalog them, and make them available, but we don't have the funding, you give us the money. So I wanted to know how they came to the US. What happened is, in the 50s and 60s, India had a lot of starvation, a lot of malnutrition, food shortage. And so Lyndon Johnson gave aid to wheat to India. Lyndon Johnson was the president, before that vice president. And in this aid program, India could buy food for rupees. It was called PL 480. There was a program called PL 480, where US agreed that instead of taking hard currency, they would take rupees, and India would be able to buy the grain. So over a period of time, by some accounts, like more than 20% of the whole rupee supply worldwide was in American hands. Because selling grain at whatever the world price was, they were sucking in all the rupees from India, and Indian government had no choice. So then the concern was that it makes India vulnerable, that somebody else owns all these rupees, and it also, from their point of view, that what do they do with these rupees? So a decision was made by two countries that US can use these rupees for intellectual work in India, sending scholars, buying material. India didn't realize that you're selling your heritage. And this is when even it was not illegal to take away old carvings from temples here and there you could take in those days. This is before it became illegal. There was no ban on ivory in those times. There's no ban on tiger skins. These came later. And manuscripts and all that. So what he told me is that this PL 480 money, US set up grants to people like Ford Foundation. A lot of these people, anyone who's an American in those days for a long time, they could, until recently when the PL 480 money ran out, you could just apply to any of these agencies in the US, and anybody American could go get a lot of money, and he could buy things, he could have a good time, he could hire a lot of scholars. So they were really buying up our heritage cheap, because we had to buy food from them and give them rupees. So he told me very honestly, he said, this is all PL 480 money. Our university said, we will take some archive, maybe they'll be useful one day. So many shiploads of these archives came, and even in the crate we had not opened. Now what an insult. Now the Narayan Murtis of the world should be spending the money to get that back. They should get it back and create jobs here to open it, scan it, catalog it, tell us what is in this, what is going on here, So, because some of those are rare materials. So you see, the problems have been going on of this sort for a long time. And people could say this government is no good. When you get rid of them, that way they'll solve it. Others will solve it. I don't see any such solution around the horizon. I don't see even awareness. I don't see concerns of this particular kind of issue. In Harvard, I was there for one of these Indology roundtables that we were sponsoring, and the gentleman who I was giving this kind of talk only. I was always been talking like this, right on their face. So this person said, have you seen such and such rare manuscript on botany from India? I said, show it to me. So he took me to this place where you needed special permission. They would not let me, they would not let us scan because they said it will destroy the paper. It's very fragile, very old paper, sometime in the 1600s. This was in Danish, I think, or Dutch, I think, one of those languages. I think it was Danish. This is a manuscript on, it is considered the oldest manuscript on modern botany, plants, science of plants. And this is written in that European language. It's very interesting when they're describing a plant, normally you'll find a painting of that leaf or something. But they took an actual cutting of that leaf and stuck it there. Or flower, they have actual flower. Of course, it's dried now. So it was very beautiful at one time, very multicolored, beautiful, handwritten, before printing and all that. Very early. So I looked into it. So the head of this East India Company, not British East India Company, not French East India Company, there was also Dutch East India Company, and then there was before that a Danish East India Company. One of those East India companies, head, because they were trading in herbal medicine, these medicinal plants, what we are called spice trade, as if they are trading in some black pepper or something like that. What they called spice trade, wrong translation. These are herbal things, herbs. So this guy who was a director had a huge herbal farm in his home in Europe, and his brother-in-law was a scientist, and he'd hired him to visit India, come back, catalog all the plants, what they do, learn from the Indians so he could have the knowledge. And this person started what became known as taxonomy, the classification of plants. So the whole field of taxonomy and the earliest books on the properties of, the botanical properties of plants are in this book. And the most interesting thing is on page 1. We took a person who knew that language to just tell us. Page 1 in that book, and I want to get a scan of that somehow. Page 1 of that book says that this book is a translation of such and such book in Malayali. It's a Malayali text. This is Malayali book, which is the translated, and that's the origin of botany. So much of this was done that we don't know. We have no idea. When this gets come back here, we're going to pay patents and we're going to pay royalty and we are going to do all this. So this has been going on for a long time. And our people, the difference is that at that time, Westerners were doing it. Now Indians are involved in this business. It's kind of and it's considered very prestigious. It's considered a mark of pride that I'm supplying them all this stuff, this sort of thing. So India is for sale, is what it amounts to. India is for sale. And with that, I'll stop, and we have some time, and I'd love to take questions. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
I'm Pramod from Bangalore. Thank you so much for the great lecture. We've been following you on a lot of social media, and that's how I got to know about you. Been very impressed with what Infinity Foundation does. What I wanted to understand, a lot of things are very impressive when we think about it, and when I go back home, then we are back to square one on a day-to-day basis. I know you took a bold decision when you were 44. I'm 36 now. I wanted to know two things. One is, what would you advise every Indian citizen? We know that all this is happening. I'm able to relate to it. What would you advise every Indian citizen in our own capacity, right, to perform on a daily basis, that we upheld our tradition and our heritage? And secondly, if we want to contribute in some way to Infinity Foundation, how is that we can do it?
Excellent question, thank you. So, my work is not simple, superficial slogans, giving some pravachan, chauvinism, getting people excited and all that. So for that there's other people. Mine is very deep original work and thinking, scholarship and so on. Therefore, the first requirement, anyone who's serious about helping me, otherwise it's just wasting my time even, because people come, they think they're all very excited, and they run away, then they all see me 5 years later and say, oh, don't you remember me, this kind of nonsense, I'd waste my time. So the first requirement is the person should have seriously read what I've written. Seriously read what I've written. And this is an answer to your first question. What should you do daily? I think you should take my books and do 20 pages a day, 10 to 20 pages a day, systematically. And sometimes you read it a couple of times to really make sure you got it. If after reading a couple of times that particular section you didn't get it, then skip it, because you'll come back, it'll make sense second time. The sections are written sufficiently independently that if you skip, it'll still be okay. It's not like a fiction story where you lose the plot. So there are a lot of points, very compact. And so to go through a book will take you a couple months. Don't do it in a hurry, it's not a fiction reading, not light reading. Form a book club. We have a book club in Toronto, we have in Washington, in various cities, we have book clubs. So in Toronto, they started a book club with 11 members, and they meet once a week, and they agree on a particular chapter or a particular section. Everybody will read that, and then when they meet, they discuss it, clear up each other's doubts. That's a book club. And when they finish reading, each of these 11 became a leader of a book club in his area. So now there's many book clubs. So this is a very interesting thing. So these people have become empowered. They can debate, they can argue. It has affected their thinking. They reinforce each other. And I respect it. So when somebody like that comes and says, how can I help you, what can I do, I take it seriously. Otherwise some random guy comes, he's just showing off, he hasn't put in the tapas. And you can't understand what I'm doing unless you put in the tapas. Otherwise you can just sit there and keep wanting to be important. And I would waste my time then. So I would say start reading and start decolonizing yourself. Before you can tell others you're doing this, that wrong, look in your own thing. For instance, in the book Being Different, I have a chapter called Sanskrit Non-Translatables, where I've given an example of about 20 words on which are being translated, and we should never translate them, we should use the Sanskrit word. So in your own life, make sure that those words, you're using them, when you're speaking English, include that Sanskrit word and not the English equivalent, because the English equivalent is incorrect. I've explained why. So there are things like that. If you want, you can start arguing what is different between us and the Abrahamic religions. Very systematically you can start. So when you read, you get empowered. You'll try out your knowledge in public with others. It'll give you a sense of strength. So I would say you should read, watch some of the YouTubes also, because YouTube try to explain the same thing in a simpler way, but you must read. If you've read even one or two of my books properly, there's hardly a person who's not been transformed. This much I'll tell you. So I'm not a popular writer where millions of people read, but then they go back to life. My readers generally are changed after that. And this I know because I get a lot of letters on this, that, who, what, how it changed them, what. So I would say the tapas you have to do for yourself is also the best way to help Infinity Foundation, because my goal is to transform people. And when you do this, you become part of our wavelength and our thinking. And then we can go the next step and see how can such people be organized. I'm giving workshops on how to be an intellectual Kshatriya. That's the topic of workshop. And I gave in Toronto, and everybody had to pay in order to make sure we don't have people who just come for eating, samosa and pakoras and having chai and talking, oh, ha, great, great, and then disappear. And very organized with PowerPoints, four modules a whole day, morning till night. And finally, each person took a homework assignment, what he will do in the next few months. And we made little teams, and they'll do certain projects to carry it out. And then this intellectual Kshatriya workshop was repeated in Washington, and then a small version in Houston. So I would say, and one of the prerequisites is people have to have read at least one book properly of mine, and others they should become other books they should be familiar with, and they should have watched enough YouTube videos, so that we are not starting at square one and giving them very introductory basic ideas. They should have done enough homework of their own. Now, Bangalore has quite a lot of such people, because I've been coming here and I know this. I get a lot of communication from such people. But there is no local leadership to really put them together. I keep getting a lot of emails from people saying, I can't do anything in terms of organizing, but if somebody else organizes, I can come. But somebody has to first be the leader. And the leadership requires time. Nothing will happen without time. It requires commitment, perseverance, following up with all the people. And you create a book club. You create a book club, you read things. And if there is enough critical mass, then you can organize a workshop. I can come and do a workshop. So, from being a reader and watching YouTubes to having a next level, having a book club to read together, like a little satsang of your own, to having a workshop, are different stages. And as you become empowered in this new way of thinking, you will become so confident in talking to 50 other people, 100 other people, and so on. I tried unsuccessfully to take people quickly and give them my PowerPoint and give them a quick lesson how to repeat it, and it backfires. It creates people with the big ego. They start plagiarizing this material, writing their own blogs, and they don't even know enough. I have a lot of plagiarizers. A lot of people tend to pick up some point and write their own blog very quickly, and that's harming. They're not really helping. So that's my thing. Now, I also have a e-group, a discussion, online discussion group. I would, and all those who've written their email IDs, I'm going to send you an invite to join. We have over 5,000 members. It's like a satsang online, where people ask questions, they post some news item, they post some things, some idea, issue, and I give a response, others give a response, and every day we are churning this knowledge. And this is less than 2 years we built it up, and it's growing. Every time I come to India, a lot more people join. So I think you should join, all of you. But I'll tell you one thing, unfortunately, I keep telling people, write your email ID in block letters so it's easy and won't be typing error. But would you believe, all the emails I collect in India, you can't believe what percent bounce, 25%. People just don't care, they're writing. And so if you've written nicely your email ID, you'll definitely be receiving an invite, and you have to accept, join Yahoo groups, and then you are on the system. So these are the ways you can be connected with me. But I really appreciate your asking the question.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, I am Lieutenant Murthy from Indian Navy, ex-retired person.
Indian?
Navy.
Okay, good.
Sir, I've been looking at your blogs and looking at your reports, and also on Facebook as well. And thank you for sharing some critical information about one of the botanical book written in Malayalam and translated and owned by East India Company. Who is the owner of this East India Company, sir?
East India Company. East India Company was a British company. There was a French, the British East India Company. Then there was a French East India Company, a Dutch East India Company, and a Danish East India Company, and maybe some others. There were major East India companies. So these East India companies no longer exist. They were finished off and long ago. But these are the companies that started trade with India. And you see, what happened is that the Ottomans, which is a Muslim empire, were in the middle between Western Europe on one side and Asia on the other side. So they blockaded the Silk Route to India and China, because a lot of manufactured goods and medicines and all kinds of things that Europeans consumed were made in India and China. We were the manufacturers and exporters, and those guys they did not have these things. They were giving us gold. India would get a lot of gold because did not need anything they had. So today it's different. They are the people supplying all the goods we are buying. But in the past, we were exporters of manufactured goods and high-tech goods. So when the Ottoman Empire captured the routes in the middle for several centuries, the Europeans couldn't get these things, and there was a big struggle So that is when Columbus went in one direction to look for a route for India, and he landed up in America, and he thought he's discovered India, and that's why the natives were called Indians, you know. And Vasco da Gama went around Africa, so they went in different directions. They were all funded by what you would today call venture capitalists to find trade route to India, bypassing the Ottomans. Like the Queen of Spain was a major funding source for Columbus. So, you guys might not know this, but the so-called discovery of the route to India, Vasco da Gama claimed that he discovered going around Africa. Actually, from the point he left the Mediterranean, a Gujarati captain of a ship escorted his ships all around Africa to brought him to India. Gujarati captain. His name is also known. It's written in history books. So it is not that they discovered. Indians were trading to the Middle East, all around Africa, and then on the other side to the ASEAN countries and China, Japan. Indians were trading all that. The Indian Ocean economy was around the India trade was very thriving. Globalization, what we are calling globalization, is not something new. This globalization existed. And China was very much thriving the land route, the Silk route, and India the ocean route. So these are not sort of discoveries. They just hired an Indian, they took him, you know. And the Gujarati sailor's ship was many, many times bigger than the Vasco da Gama ship following bit later. And even British, so this is how they so-called discovered India. But then the Portuguese, Spaniards, they were doing this. Later the North Europeans, Dutch, Danish, French, English took over the domination of this. So we have to understand how the engagement with India was not as equals, because we had a lot of knowledge, we had a lot of technology, we had a lot of manufacturing. They came because they had guns and cannons and things like that.
In Captain Ajit Vodakal blogs, that including Jesus, Aristotle, everybody came to India, they learnt everything, they went back, and they started their own religion and philosophy.
This Jesus business coming to India, I don't buy.
Okay.
Nor is it good for us, because it gives a lot of reason for, okay, he's our own beta, you know, he's our own son, we should bring him back, you know, what's wrong, he's our own guy. They don't understand, we know they don't understand Christianity is ours only, we should become Christian, what is the problem? This is what they have spread to confuse us. Whether he came or not, we can't determine, there are speculative theories, but whatever it is not helping us in our favor. A lot of people think that proving that he was an Indian or something makes it better for us, when actually a lot of our fools therefore find a good reason to convert. It lowers the barrier to conversion. So I don't buy this Jesus India business at all. You know, and there is not that much evidence, very speculative, connecting the dots kind of evidence. But anyway, yeah.
Rajivji, pranam. First of all, I'm sorry, because I was the one who interrupted you. I would like to publicly say so.
No, it's okay.
I will do Swadhyaya. It's my mistake.
No, it's okay. It's just that I'm going with a certain flow of ideas.
I understand that.
I but don't worry.
I apologize.
Don't worry.
I'm sorry. And then, thank you. And I'll just come to the question now.
I was also one of those always trying to interrupt my professors and get arguments and fights with them, and as a young person, so I fully understand. It's just that I'm now old guy, so I don't do that, you know. Although I still when I started this work, my job was to go to conferences all over the US in these fields and sit in the audience and keep interrupting and raising issues and problems and all. So I know what is not a bad thing what you're doing. Yeah.
So one thing is, of all these problems that we are facing right now, I have a huge interest in China, and I am also learning Chinese. So Chinese culture was also appropriated, the opium trade, and even they were made servants through the West, Britishers through their trade or through Japanese. But they have been able to rise. And recently also, you also wrote, which is also my thought, we have Facebook, Twitter, but they have their own. They have their own Weibo, they have their own QQ. Why don't we also do it?
Yeah.
And also, I'll just finish this question. So can we take an example from how China has been able to do it? They have been able to get back their civilization. In fact, they have a very recent movie also of 12 zodiac signs.
Yeah. So anyway, So China's story is different than ours because China did
how
not.
is- can we learn from
No,
something
but
from
you've
this?
asked the question, so now I'll answer it. Now you should let me
Thank you
answer.
so much.
Okay. So China's story is China's civilization never got disrupted. Ours got disrupted even before the British got disrupted by the Mughals, by the Islamic invasion. So we've had long, continuous one invader after the other. Whereas Chinese, when they had foreign domination, it was for a very brief period. You need multiple generations to forget the memory of who you are. And we had that. And China kept a Mandarin language. Today, the world's leading journals on China studies are in Mandarin from China, and the editorial board is Chinese. Many of them work for the People's Liberation Army, the government. So they're very nationalistic. They control China studies. India studies, the leading journals on India studies are not in India. Leading journals on South Asian studies are published in the West. Editorial board is theirs. Murthy Classic Library is going to be another one. Okay. Westerners, editor-in-chief, four senior editors of the Murthy Classics are all non-Indians. So, we're just feeding this because it's glamorous for us. It's fashionable. No Chinese billionaire or government would think of starting a classics library, giving to some Americans that you translate 500 books and tell us who we are and what we are, and we don't know, sir, we don't understand, you are so good, This kind of a very slavish mentality you only find here, you see. So the real question is, why are there slavish Murthy type people who are so rich and still going to look up and can't have their self-esteem? And even to recreate self-esteem, you need their permission and they have to give it to us, which is kind of self-defeating. So the real problem is that. The real problem is the Indians who got bought off, through this long colonial process. You did not find Chinese emperors bought off that way. The Chinese were always translating Western thought into Mandarin. Now, to make sure they understand the best ideas of the West on their own terms. Now, the equivalent thing would have been if Indians were always translating into Sanskrit. Whatever new idea came from the West, translate it into Sanskrit, teach it in all the Pitams, in all the Sanskrit patshalas, and then keep up with their knowledge. That would have been the equivalent thing. But we did the opposite. We are happy that we translated the Sanskrit into English or Sanskrit into German. So we are happy because otherwise we feel nobody notices us. We have the complex of being left out, and so we want to be included on the world stage, but we don't feel strong enough to be included on our terms. So we are saying, please don't ignore me. Please take me as whatever you want. Just take me in. At least give me a seat at the table. Maybe I'll just clean your shoes, but just put me there. Indian is really lacking his self-esteem in doing that. Why aren't we translating knowledge into our terms? I did a project, Infinity Foundation did a project, a very brilliant Indian who is both trained in the Western philosophy. He has his PhD from Oxford and a brilliant Sanskritist, and he had a guru, and he is also a practitioner. He did a project for us at one time where we took Western, modern European thought, philosophy, Hegel and Kant and Wittgenstein and all these fancy Western thought, and he did a summary of them in Sanskrit. He did. Because he knows the philosophy, he knows Sanskrit. And for a summer or two, he went to BHU, to the Sanskrit people, taught it there, and he went to Tirupati Sanskrit University. He went to the top universities, and he conducted a summer workshop where he would be the Westerner, teaching the philosophy, and ask them to give a response. Yeah? And he says that these young Pandits from Sanskrit, when they understood it being explained to them in the Sanskrit, they could give brilliant answers. He says they had answers to all the Western thought because I explained it to them in their terms. So I was so excited. I said, let's do this. Let's go to, would you be willing to just do this? And then he got a job offer from Tirupati University to be Vice Chancellor. So he was very excited. And I said, you go there, and then we make the Tirupati University the center for new kind of education of Sanskrit Pandits, where we teach them Western thought and how to respond to it. And he was very interested in that. Then he consulted, he's a Bengali gentleman, this fellow, Nothing against Bengalis, but it so happens. So he consulted a big brother Bengali, Ashish Nandi. He called him and says, Ashish Da, what do you think? And Ashish Da convinced him that this is the wrong thing, you'll be saffronized, don't do this, you've got a good job in the US, don't sit there, you'll ruin your life. So this guy did not go. And my project couldn't move forward because it's not easy to, this kind of person is very special. I mean, if he had done it, we would have been operating this for 10 years or more by now. We would have produced a huge amount of Sanskrit scholars who also know Western thought and how to respond to it. This is what we need to do. So we have to reverse the process. And people like Murthy are accelerating the wrong direction. This is a problem.
Raju sir, Pranam. Yesterday I saw your debate with Suhil Sethi, and really thanks for that debate that you...
Actually, it was just a 2-minute clip, but the rest of it, they did not let me speak much.
It was there for around 27 minutes.
Yeah, so but I'm saying that very little I could... I mean, the point is he's this showman and he's one of the... You know, he's the official advisor to the festival. Yeah? And the person who is the head of the festival is moderating. So I am not given the stature, the equal. You know?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Sir, my question is that what you told about our ancient teaching and all, I believe still it is going on in Bangalore, which I can see in Pathshalas and all. But the problem with them is spiritual gurus. They don't want to see the the other world. They want to concentrate on only spirituality. But for other people, livelihood is also as important as spirituality. And I believe that education system in your Breaking India, what you have said, Dravidian and Aryans. The same thing we read, that Aryans are outsiders.
Right.
So it's a problem with our education system.
And
how can
US
solve that?
Indian Embassy in Washington, on the home page, there is this history, right about India, India's great country, constitution, and all these, whatever, all the good things on India. And there's also a section called history. When you look at history, it says India started with this Aryan invasion theory, Indian government site. So when I'm fighting these things with the school textbooks, they have to just say, Raminath Thapar agrees with us, why do you have a problem? Indian government agrees with us. So you see, our own government has been encouraging these wrong ideas. And none of that has changed till now. It has not changed so far. These kind of things still go on. I was invited by the Foreign Service Institute in Delhi, which is where they train IFS officers. So when you become an IFS officer, when you pass the exam and you're selected for IFS, you go for several months of training, you live in that place. So there was a batch of 30. I was asked to address them. So the reason I was invited is because somebody I know who follows me, his brother he's the director there at that time. So I went there. And my topic was, what is the Indian grand narrative? Who are we when you go overseas as diplomats? How are you going to present yourself? And I started by explaining that Japan has a narrative, the Japanese diplomats understand, the Japanese businessmen understand, China has a narrative, Russia has a narrative. All these countries, whether you're a businessman, whether you're a diplomat, when you're going overseas, you know how to present who they are. They have a sense of history and a sense of pride. And so you are going to be diplomat, you ought to know this. I thought they would be very, very interested and that they would already have the knowledge. But the group of 30 was divided into two kinds. The one kind was supportive, and they were saying, sir, please teach us. We haven't been taught, but teach us. We want to learn. So I got very encouraged. But the other half were very angry at my raising this issue. One guy said, I'm from Assam. What do you mean by the Indian narrative? We have our own narrative. Another one said, what do you think of Dalits? They don't share your narrative. What Indian narrative? What is this Indian narrative? Dalit, you ask a Dalit, he is unhappy with the oppression. So they had what I call the anti-narrative, the narrative of fragments. And my blog 2-3 days ago on first post talks about two narratives of India. And the Delhi vote is a victory of the fragments narrative against nation. This is how I'm interpreting it. And it doesn't matter whether it's AAP, maybe AAP will disappear, but that fragments narrative is a very strong, powerful force, political, with Western funding and Western support. So whether it's AAP doing it or somebody else will do it, maybe in Karnataka it will be somebody else doing it, or AAP will do it. The force, the powers of breaking India forces is strong. is not going away. And the pro-narrative, pro-nation narrative, people don't have their act together. Because as you said, the gurus are into only teaching a limited thing. They are not teaching the whole narrative. While, why aren't we teaching Mahabharata? Why aren't we teaching the big narratives of our own past? Why it's more fashionable to read Shakespeare or something like that, than our own narratives. These are considered old-fashioned. So you will find the government not doing this. Our education is not doing it. Media are completely hopeless. They don't want to. They will hate you if you talk like this. So our problems are very serious. Not just one or two, agencies or organizations that are problems, but our problem is very, very serious. All I can do is make you aware. And you as an individual can take it upon yourself to seriously study this material, become an expert at it. When you are solid as an expert, then you can talk to 50 other people. That's what we have to do. It's a long process. I'm very, until the new government came in, people were not taking my word seriously. They would say that we'll get rid of Sonia Gandhi, sir, you don't know, all problems will be solved. They didn't realize it's not so simple. So with Sonia Gandhi gone, you don't have that excuse anymore. So now why aren't we solving the problem? Yeah? So the problem we are not solving because it's a very deep problem. Our leaders don't even know this. This is not their priority even. Priority if the political people get elected. Numbers game, we get so many percent here, that percent. We give him this, he'll give us 4%. We sell him that. It's like that, trading through power brokering. That's what it is. They're not really, I don't see who's the big visionary of the Indian narrative, which is a think tank that really understands all this. There are a lot of people who have slogans and they'll plagiarize a little bit of what's been written and write something and come up with one-liner, but that's not going to do the job. You really need serious workers. So they're neither in the Hindu organizations nor in the political organizations. They're certainly not in the academic organizations. They're not in the media organizations. Where are they? That's a very big gap and vacuum that I find.
Rajiv Malhotra ji. My background is I'm a MBA from one of the premier institutes in India. I have read your 3 books and I have a clarification that I need from you. See, a lot of people in Bangalore and Karnataka are Dvaita followers.
They are what?
Dvait.
Yes.
Dvait philosophy.
Yes.
And the way our Dharma Gurus have taught Dvait to me is that Atma and Paramatma are different. So this is, this doesn't gel with the integral unity that you explain in your book.
It does.
Have I understood it wrongly?
No, I'll tell you what. Yeah, but very, very important point. The Paramatma-Atma relationship of distinctiveness in Dvait and Vishishta Dvait, they are distinct, but still one is a form of the other. What is distinct is not that one is separate, having its own separate existence. One cannot have its own separate existence without the Paramatma. It's dependent. There's a dependency relationship. So that gives an integral unity. But the distinctiveness is permanent, but the Atman is an aspect of the Paramatma, but not, it's distinct. So it's like, so Paramatma's aspect is this particular Atma, this Atma, this Atma. All the entities, material, non-material, are really aspects of that. But they are distinct in the sense that you do not say the separateness will go away in a unity consciousness. So in Advait, the separateness goes, but in Dvait, the separateness remains. But that is still very different than the Western idea of a synthetic unity, where there is the nature of distinction is different in that. So what we call Dvait is it is still relative existence. There is a distinction between the two, but one's existence is subordinate to the other. So there's a shift in that. And if you read the Dvait people, they're very profound in understanding this. The Dvait people will say that the Advait experience is not ultimate. Actually, Advait experience, where you lose the separate identity, is an interim experience, after which you will get even higher experience. They will tell you that to you. And of course, the Advait people will say the opposite, that this Dvait experience of dependency relationship is an interim, but you are yet to go even higher. So we won't get into which one will supersede the other, because I'll be happy to get either of them. Okay.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for being here today. Sir, it's not a question, it's more of your view. I want to know your view on this. Of late, there's been a sudden revival of interest in our culture, with a lot of people claiming that the aircraft was first discovered in India, plastic surgery was first discovered in India, IVF, everything's Indian.
What is the third one?
IVF, cloning and all that's discovered in India. So do you think...
The second example is valid. The first and third, I don't believe. But
Okay.
go ahead.
So do you think it helps your cause in any way? Or the younger generation wouldn't just buy it, they feel all
so
these
let me
are
give you,
baseless claims.
let me answer this, because one of the projects Infinity Foundation did is we started a 20-volume series on history of Indian science and technology. And I made a policy decision that we will only consider something valid if we can have proof today. So the Delhi Iron Pillar, you can go and check its properties, and it's got a 2-micron phosphorus coating. You can check it, and you can look at how it must have been made, what temperature they needed, what physics and chemistry they needed to make it. So you can do the reverse engineering today. So if you look at the tiles in the Harappan and in the Saraswati civilization, you can look at how they must have manufactured it. So my series decided that nothing which is sort of a statement in a literary text without physical evidence, we are going to accept. That doesn't mean we reject it. It means we are not willing to accept it. It means it's still up for debate. So if somebody says there were nuclear bombs in Mahabharata, I told them, you show me a crater with radioactivity. We'll take a Geiger counter, because if there has been a nuclear bomb, then for tens of thousands of years it will have radioactivity. So take me to any place in Kurukshetra or anywhere with a Geiger counter and show me this is the demarcation of radioactive. Nobody has shown that, so we can't admit it. If you want Pushpak Viman that existed, then show me a crash site where there's even some part of it, or a diagram, visual, not that somebody was going in a Viman, okay. That could be interpreted in many ways. You know, we don't necessarily know there was a physical object which carried them. Maybe there's some other kind of teleporting. Maybe it's teleporting. And maybe human beings will discover teleporting in the future, and those people already had it, maybe. So there is plausibility, but not certainty. There's a difference between a plausible argument in science, where you give a scenario and you've shown that this is plausible. All these are plausible. But my book series will not go with plausibility as a standard, but put a higher standard of we can prove it today to any skeptical scientist that this is the case. Now, I think there is advantage in stratifying it. There is advantage in saying, do 20 volumes on what is certain. Establish credibility. Get in the door. Don't mix it up with what they'll consider quackery. So this way, what we are producing, there is no doubt, because you can come and check it for yourself. You know. So if there is a Ayurvedic old text which says you make this mixture, that mixture cure, and then apply it this way, that way, and it will cure this disease, you can subject it to test today. And there are a lot of Ayurvedic R&D centers that are testing with modern techniques. They're testing. And what is tested and succeeds should get in. What fails should be rejected. So you have to subject it to scientific validation. Yeah. If you do that, you will find there are a huge amount of things in mathematics and astronomy and physics and chemistry are valid. And you also find that there are other things which are written in some text. We cannot validate it, but we cannot reject it either. We have to say this is an unproven claim. So I think if we behave in this manner, we are more successful. Because we are credible people, we are skeptical, we are not accepting it as dogma, than if we just go around saying everything was known and so on and so forth. So I don't believe that kind of chauvinism. I am trying to be very solid, rigorous, scientific kind of person.
That puts a lot of credibility into all the claims,
Yes.
and it makes it more believable. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Sir, I was really fascinated by your 12-year to 7-year education program. Could you comment or share the learnings that have come through from that experiment of yours? Okay, so there is a Pandit Ram Samuj in Dartmouth, Massachusetts. If you write me an email, I'll forward it to him. He's the hero. He's a person who's a robotic engineer from Trinidad, a Hindu, who's a Pandit, and he left his robotics and whatnot and started doing helping our cause.
And he discovered this Lozanov. I'm more of a historian of digestion, so my interest in Lozanov is not to replicate it. He's replicating the knowledge, taking back to our tradition. My interest was more to be able to claim that this tradition that they're talking about is not discovered by them, but it came from India. So we have complementary interests. I'm doing it as part of my multi-volume on digestion and U-turns, and he's doing it as an actually trying to reproduce that old Vedic knowledge. So the best would be if you are interested in knowing more, and I would like people in India to start getting in connection with him. He is looking for partners in India. If you write to me, I'll send him the email and you can be in touch with him. But imagine one man on his own, he convinced some donor. Imagine it's good donors too, you know. This donor gave $1 million anonymous. We still don't know who it is. Only Ram Samuj knows. But some donor, I think one of some Hindu donor, gave $1 million for this project on the condition that the university will match it with their own $1 million. And the university, I went there, talked to the chancellor and all that. They were very impressed. They also put their matching. And they left Pandit Ram Samuj in charge of this project. So he's running it, and very successfully. So like one of their sample student groups are the Bhutanese refugees. There's a lot of Bhutanese refugees going different places. So these Bhutanese refugees teaching them, and the state is very happy because they know English, they're very poor. So he's using this accelerated learning to make them into very sharp students, and then they get into good colleges also. So this is working, and we ought to get these models back in India rather than buying some foreign stuff which is huge tuition and trying to go for the glamour that I got this degree from such and such place. It's become fashionable among Indians to say that I got my such and such degree. It's a foreign linked here from there and on. You know, I feel very unhappy about it.
Good evening, sir. Basically, myself Meghna. And basically my questions revolves around the role of youth as such. Myself, I'm studying in Christ University, and a part of my subject is sociology, and this semester we are studying the study of Indian society. So in class we see a whole lot of things that are being talked about Indian society, and as you rightly pointed out, the colonial minds of Indian people as such are discussed, and how the construction has to be done. When teacher speaks about Vedic tradition, literature, culture, about Samajnana and all those stuff, my classmates will feel really excited about it, and they take part in it, and they also recollect our rich culture and heritage. But then when the class gets over, the scenario is entirely different. They speak about, dude, why are you not playing guitar? It's so lame to play veena. See, come on, be liberal as such. I really not understood what liberal they mean by. And then, why are you dancing classical songs? Come on, be Western, open up, don't close your minds. So as I was pondering about all these things, I was thinking about Swami Vivekananda and how he suggested the solution for all the problems should lie from the grassroots level. And the grassroots level for the Indian society is the youth. So what, in your opinion, should we do to cherish all these things?
Well, what you should do is, you're a smart person, I can tell. You're bright and you have a passion. You're not going to give up easily. You articulate. So if you read my books and really get deep into understanding, then you create a little group of where you debate, you discuss, and get 5 people like you. And then 5 will grow. So the grassroots needs, we need 3 components. 3 components to have a renaissance or a revival. We need knowledge. That is my job. I'm doing original research, trying to supply you with knowledge, ammunition. But then second component is we need to train leaders with that knowledge. Yeah, that is where you come in. You have to train yourself and become a leader, then you can lead others. But you first have to train yourself. I don't have an academy where I can train people because I don't have one. So first is the knowledge, content, subject matter, expertise. Second is the human resource who have to be trained in this. And the third is you have to have institutions where they are continuing this from generation to generation. You know, like Bharati Vidya Bhavan is a great institution, IGNCA is a great institution, you have some institutions. So the role of institution is that you need a body, you need a home, you need physical structure, legal structure where there is funding available, resources, infrastructure. So you need institutions also. Now, in our country, unfortunately, these three are disconnected. So I have the content, but I don't have an institution, and I don't have a human resource. But there are people who are gurus, they got a lot of chelas who will do anything they tell them, but they may not have that content beyond a very narrow teaching. They don't have that content. So if they invite me, I can teach to their people, but then they should not be threatened by me. They should not feel that, oh, this guy will come and whatnot, because I just come in to help, you know. You see? And I'm not at all ambitious to create my own institution. I am happy I can be a guest teacher in your institution to your students. Now, what more can I do? I don't even want to be paid for it. You see? So it is not easy for me to get these kind of connections, because the political groups, Delhi-based, are very parochial, very suspicious of somebody who's not from within. Oh, maybe he may know. We should send a man to copy a little bit what he knows, bring it to us. But he shouldn't come. So Rajiv's knowledge is great, but Rajiv himself may be dangerous. This is a problem we have.
I'm a science student from Christ University. I have been personally benefited from your talks and books. My question is, ancient India had many great scientific discoveries in both science and technology, but you will not find either environmental degradation or ethical spiritual vacuum that is pathetically ubiquitous today in today's world. How did they achieve that balance?
What was the question? Ethical?
Ethical vacuum. I mean, they did not have environmental degradation or ethical vacuum, which is so ubiquitous today. Yeah. How did they achieve that balance?
This is very important, because the idea of the integral unity is a system where the environment is part of who we are, right? And the ethics comes from this whole tattvamasi, you are that, there's a whole ethical basis. So this idea that the science that the West came up with is based on the philosophy, the cosmology of world is matter only. There is no divinity, there is no Shakti in it, there is no, nothing spiritual about it. So therefore, protecting the environment is a very artificial thing for them, which has been invented only recently and only to prevent the raw material from finishing. So when they say we conservation means don't let your raw material finish, conserve it. It doesn't mean you really respect it. Correct. Whereas in our case, the nature of the cosmology is such that the respect for nature is built into our philosophy. So it's a very different thing.
My second question is, in our friends' discussions, when I give an example from mathematical calculation from Yukti Bhasha, they easily understand it and they say that it is very interesting and scientific, it is very interesting. But when I say that it is from India, they become skeptical. So how to,
So what you have to do is, you have to give them the actual text of that source, and then its English translation, and then how you apply it and say this is where it is, and this is well established. You see, the quacks have harmed you and me, because I can tell you are a scientific person with rigor, so am I. And what I'm trying to do is same as what you're trying to do, base it on actual rigor. But the quacks of our side have just gone chauvinistically, they're not scientifically trained, they don't understand one thing from another, they don't understand a claim from a fact. It may be a claim, but maybe not proven. And so therefore, they reduce the credibility of the whole thing. I think we should go to the next year. But a good point you made.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Sure.
And it's very unfortunate. First time I have heard about you. And first
so it's your misfortune that you heard me.
Exactly. So, and I come with my friend Pramod Srinivas. Sir, with the profession, myself is Vijay Pandey, and with the profession I am a education consultant. I am in consult with more than 5,000 students from Kochi to Tilmun district, Nagaland, and Twang. So my question is, how do I will be going to carry your idea to such a huge crowd, number one. Number two, if I'll be going to organize such events, let's take an example of Guwahati, or, Itanagar, or Kolkata, will you be able to come, sir?
Okay. So first advice is that each of us has to decolonize and re-educate ourselves before we can do it to other people. So the education system that you are teaching, with my knowledge and my ideas, first you have to read, you have to understand and apply it in your own life. Really get into the details of what I'm trying to say. Now there's 2 of my 3 books are in Kannada. Being Different is in Kannada, Vibhinata it's called, and Breaking India is in Kannada. It was launched yesterday. Hindi also. Both these books are in Hindi also. Yeah? You can go online and get the... If you go to my website, rajivmalhotra.com, you get the names, and then you go to Flipkart with those names and search, and you find them there. So first, you have to get really solidly entrenched in this knowledge. Then only you can figure out for the age level and the particular students, whatever kind they are, how much they can understand, how much you can teach. That is your next job. The second question, as far as my availability is concerned, I go where I get maximum impact in terms of transforming people. So I don't go where it's a casual group or just one guy who wants to spend a lot of time with me. It's not interesting for me. So for me, what is interesting is a large gathering of very serious people. Yeah. So if you send a proposal, you have to tell me what it is that you want me to do, because if I go somewhere far, now Bangalore is good because in a few days I can do a lot of events. Yesterday I was at Art of Living. It's a huge event, huge number of people, exceedingly plugged into what I'm saying, and it was delightful. In the morning we had a great book launch. So, if I go to a place where there's many events and my time is utilized well, and there are large events and substantial people who are really serious about it, I'm happy. But if I go far away and there's a tiny one event somewhere and they're not even that serious about it, I feel sorry for them because they need the work, but I have to look after my own priorities also. So it all depends on what your proposal is. You have to send it to me. Thank you. Final question, then we're done. Yes.
Sir, my question is on temples. Right from the tip of Kanyakumari to the greater west of Pakistan and greater east of Bangladesh, we have had loads of temples.
And all the way to Angkor Wat, yeah, and Bali.
Yes. So
and Afghanistan and Tajikistan and all these stan. I was at a Ayurved place recently, getting some medical treatment, and there was a woman from Afghanistan who settled as a child. They went and settled in Germany. So she's German of Afghani background, but very proud and loves India and this and that. So I always test these people how far I can push them. Yeah. So she was into this, her language is nothing to do with Sanskrit, it's Persian, so she was into that, while really, loving India and its food and all these symbolic things, but in terms of philosophy and where she comes from, she did not know anything about Zoroastrian when I said that was a pre-Islamic civilization and that was very much linked with our civilization. The old Iranian was linked with Sanskrit and all. None of that, she was very blocked. And then I said, do you know even Sthan, like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sthan is a Sanskrit word. And she was dumbfounded. I said, even your name is a Sanskrit name. All these Sthan countries are basically Sanskrit oriented. So you have to ask, why is Kazakhstan called Kazakhstan? Why do they call themselves? It is the Kazakh Jati, Uzbek Jati, Tajik Das Jati, Turkmen Jati. And the Sthan of those Jatis is the name of their country. That is how it is based. Only Pakistan, there is no Paki Jati. Yeah.
Okay.
When you're trying to look at the geography, all the Sthan countries you've got to include.
Okay.
And there are temples there.
Yes, I understand, sir. So it's like this. So I'm aware that we were a totally practical country back 5,000 years ago. And our temples were built on a specific geometry. And the knowledge on this geometry is lost over a period of time. And when you sit for a debate with somebody who's going to criticize you right at this point, it's going to hurt bad. And right now at this particular point of time, how are we going to take back that knowledge when we go for a debate?
Okay, so there are many debate topics. I talk about them in my Intellectual Kshatriya workshop. So the topic on the geometry of the temples is one we raised. In US, there's a guy who worked in Infinity Foundation for a while. His name is Krishnan Ramaswamy. and he just finished his 3-year training as a sannyasi in the Swami Dayanand's organization. He got the 3-year program to be an acharya, and he's back in the US, and he's a very brilliant man. He's one of the co-authors of this book, Invading the Sacred, which we put together. He's one of the co-authors of that. He has spent the last 2 years discovering and writing. He's writing a book on the geometry, cosmic geometry represented in the temples, and the whole scientific process of how the temples, where they're located, how they're, the whole geometry. And I think he's going to teach a workshop in the US. So some people exist who are trying to understand all this. That's good news. Yeah.
I think someone has written some
Thank
piece
you
of
very much.
paper. Just
Okay, we heard great philosophy and principles, but at grassroots level, conversion, old, the Hindu popular, whatever in India, any plans against conversion? So anyway, what I'm talking about is any plans against conversion. I cannot, sitting in US, come up with plans against conversion. I mean, I write a lot which gives ammunition and arguments for people that they can use, but to carry it out, others have to do it. I cannot do it. You can join my e-group, where we talk about all this conversion, who is doing what and how we should argue, what we should do about it. You should join the e-group and you will learn some ideas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Rajiv Malhotra ji. It was not just listening, but it was inspiring. The 1 hour time was an inspiring time for all of us. I thank Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji for being with us for this 1 hour and giving us a beautiful, beautiful lecture and inspiring us all through. Thank you so much. And I request Shri Rajiv Malhotra ji to, to receive a small memento from IGNC SRC. And I request Shri Vikram Sampath ji and Shri Suresh ji to give the memento.
You should do a close-up of this also. Good. Thank you. Great job, you guys.
Thank you, Vikram Sampath ji and Shri Suresh ji for handing over the memento. Bharati Vidya, I thank Bharati Vidya Bhavan as a premier institute, shares the same platform.